Today is the All Life Forms Memorial Service, and I always think of this as kind of a Dharma School students' day. So my talk today is kind of geared more for Dharma School students, so I hope you're paying good attention. So first of all, we all love our pets. And one of the things that we do at this service is to remember those of our wonderful pets that have passed in the past year. So this year I have a list of 39 pets that we want to remember. And this is our pet. Her name is Yuki, and she has not passed. So I just wanted to recognize the fact that we all love our pets so much. They're such an important part of our lives. And Yuki has been with us for 13 years. 13 years. And she's still very genki and energetic, very happy, and loves everybody. So we don't know how much longer she'll be with us, but we love her every single day that she's in our lives. Okay, so here's the list of the pets that we are remembering. And I'll just read these 39 names. Josie Kakusuji, who's a dog. Ice, a dog. Buster, a cat. Tubby, dog. Boo Boo Kitty, a cat. Monroe, a cat. Tomo, a dog. Daisy, a dog. Nighty, a mouse. Bungo, a cat. Katsu, a dog. Ariko, cat. Miwa, dog. Nippy is a goldfish, as is Blippy and Dorito. I think they came from the same family. Leah, a cat. Peepers, cat. Clover, cat. Goldiefish is a fish. Sushi. I hope that's not how he ended up. Winston, cat. Miso, dog. Two, fish. Toshi, dog. Sunset, fish. Smoothie, a guinea pig. Mobslayer the First, a fish. Phoebe, cat. Goldie, fish. Juno, cat. Blackie, cat. Fish, fish. Casper, cat. Connie, cat. Snow White, fish. Dusty, cat. Spud, beloved guinea pig. And Koi Koi, Obon, goldfish. So I'm assuming most of these fish are from one of the festivals. Well, at least, they were able to give their owners some joy while they lived, and it's just an example of how transient life can be. So because today is recognition or celebrating all life forms, I also wanted to recognize or make note of this. This is our okesa, and the Dharma School students all received an okesa. How many of you are wearing your Montoshiki show today with this okesa? Okay, some of the Dharma School teachers I see have them on. And so this is an okesa or a Montoshiki show that was made special for this year, celebrating our 125th year of the BCA, of our Jodo Shinshu school being in America. So these okesas were made especially for this celebration. And I wanted to highlight the fact that what they chose to put on this okesa are agricultural things that are alive and living. Because most of the Japanese who came to America were farmers and fishermen and people in agriculture and working with those kinds of things. So you see some of the symbols. So how many of you see the watermelon? Or the heads of grain? Do Do you see the grain? What about the strawberry? Do you see that? Raise your hand if you see it. How about the grapes? Do you see where the grapes are? Or the fish? And the eggs? I had to ask my husband what those brown things were. They look like acorns to me, but he said those are eggs. What about the tomato? And the chicken? And the eggplant? It's one of my favorites. So this is a recognition of the deep connection that our ancestors, or the Isseis who came from Japan, had to the land and to the sea, and a recognition of that. And then I also wanted to point out on the Osanae that's up on the Naijin, all of those fruits and vegetables were homegrown. Most of it is from our trees. They don't look so good, but from a distance they do. They look pretty good. I kind of cleaned them up, and then one of the kaki, or the persimmon, I received from one of my Project Kokoro lady friends. So I wanted to bring attention to the fact that we still continue that tradition of honoring and appreciating all life forms, and it's not just animals. So it also includes all the foods that we eat. Okay, so let's get into my Dharma talk. I basically wanted to emphasize our connection to life on Earth. And so today, because I said I felt like this is more of a Dharma school student service, I'm going to mostly be telling or speaking to Dharma school students. And I'm going to tell you a story. And the story comes from this book called The Clan of the Cave Bear. And I brought the book, got this from the library, and I read this book back in the 80s. It came out in 1980, and so it's been over 40 years since I first read this book. But it tells about a time way back when, and I'll tell you in just a minute. But it does talk about the Ice Age, and we're talking about a time 25,000 years ago. And of course, this is not a true story because we don't have any records from that time. But we do have a lot of scientists, paleontologists, anthropologists, people who study the history of the Earth and its people. And so this book is based on a lot of that scientific research and study. And so Jean Auel, who is the author, took all this information and she created a story based on the facts that she was able to research and find out about. So I re-listened to this book in the last month or so. For some reason I thought, I really, really want to revisit this book. And so I bought the audiobook, and this book is part of something called the Earth Children series. There are 6 books in this series. And these books are huge. This book has almost 500 pages. So it's a big book, but there's a lot of information in it. And I really enjoyed reading this, and I'm really enjoying rereading it. But I got so excited about going through this book again and hearing about all of these animals that she talks about in this book, animals that no longer live on Earth. They're extinct. And we're talking 25,000 years ago. This is way after the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs disappeared 65 million years ago. And then from that time on, mammals became more and more important. And up to the time of the ice ages, they had really developed into many, many different species. And in this book, she talks about a lot of those animals that they encounter. So let's start with this story. This is the story of a little girl named Ayla. And of course, this is not a true story. It's a fiction story. And in some regards, many stories or fiction stories can be called myths because they're not things that really happened. But a myth also, even though it may not be true in the sense that it actually occurred, a myth also has really important value in that it reveals lots of truths about life and about our existence. Joseph Campbell, who many of you know about, talked about the importance of myths in our lives. And one of the myths he talks about is something called the hero's journey. And in many, many myths, we are talking about a hero who goes on a quest. And this story of Ayla is also about her hero's journey. So let's talk about that. So again, I mentioned this happens in the Ice Age, 25,000 years ago. This is considered prehistoric time. Back then, there were people, and I'll talk about the people that lived in that time. Some of them, they didn't have any kind of writing, so we don't have records of them. But we do have artifacts and things that talked about how they lived, and we have some of their bones and the caves that they lived in or the shelters. So we have a lot of evidence that scientists today have found out about. So in this story, Ayla is a 5-year-old little girl. And of course, it's a story and there aren't pictures, so I don't really know what she looks like, but she's described as a blonde girl, 5 years old, and something terrible happens to her. There's an earthquake that takes her entire family and camp, the people that she lived with, and she is like the only survivor. So she's left alone, this little 5-year-old girl, and she wanders around not knowing what to do. So for days and days, she's looking for people that she used to know, and it's this earthquake that traumatized her so much so that she almost can't remember what happened. So during that time, she encounters something called a lion cave. A lion cave no longer exists. This is also an extinct animal, but I will show you a picture of it because they've recreated how it must have looked. She encounters a lion cave and barely escapes. She crawls into a hole. The lion tries to grab her, and she gets far enough back in that it doesn't get her, but it does claw her. She gets 4 claw marks on her left thigh, but for some reason the cave lion couldn't get her, and then eventually just gave up and walked away. So after the cave lion leaves, then she comes out of the cave, and then she now has this terrible injury, and she's still lost, has nobody to find. She doesn't know where she's going. Eventually, she collapses by a river, and she's going to die. I mean, because she has no food, nobody to take care of her wound. At the same time, there is another group of people, totally different from Ayla's people. And we come to understand that these people, or this group of people that find her, are Neanderthals. So during that time of the Ice Age, 25,000 years ago, there are 2 groups of humans. One was the Neanderthals, and the other was a group called Cro-Magnon. So we have 2 groups of humans living kind of at the same time, but not really wanting to interact with each other. They were suspicious of each other. And this is a time when there were not many people at all on the planet. So people were spread out. They really didn't have to encounter each other. But because of this earthquake, this group of Neanderthals, who call themselves the clan, were trying to find a new place to live. And then they wander by and they see Ayla right next to this river. Most of them just ignore her. They say, oh, that's just, something that's going to die. However, not everyone walks by. And the person who doesn't is this person. Her name is Isa, and she's an older clan woman. She's a healer, and she's somebody who cannot leave anyone in pain. She sees Ayla lying there by the river, and she decides, I have to help this child. She has to first get permission from her leader that she can help her, and he reluctantly says, okay. Everybody's grumbling. You don't want to pay attention to this child. She's a child of the others. Why do we even want to pay attention to her? But Isa does take her, carries her, and the whole group is still searching for a new place to live. They keep searching. In the meantime, Isa is helping to cure Ayla. She carries her because she's so weakened she can't even walk. And Isa and the rest of the group have all of the things on their back to try to start a new cave. But Isa's very strong. That's something we find out. Neanderthals were very strong people. And so Isa decided she was going to carry this child. So she does nurse her back to health. And of course, Ayla doesn't even know what these people are like. She is able to recover, but doesn't understand who these strange people are either. She finds out that they have a limited ability to vocalize. And we don't know if that's really true, but that's how they're presented in this book. But they have a very complex method of communication using signs and using their hands. They use some grunting, they can kind of make a few noises, but most of their communication is through hand signs. And we know that through people who are deaf, that using sign language is a tremendous way of communication. So in this book, the clan, that's their method of communication. It takes Ayla a while to understand them and to learn how to communicate. But eventually she is able to do that, especially with the help of Isa's brother, Kreb. So this is Kreb. And he's also kind of scary. In fact, most of the people in their group are scared of Kreb because he is their Mogur. And in the book, a Mogur is the shaman. He's like the spiritual connection to the other world. He's somebody that looks very scary. He had an encounter with a cave lion who kind of damaged one of his eyes, so he only could see out of one eye. He was crippled, but he's definitely a man of great power. So he takes a liking to this strange child who actually shows no fear of him. Ayla comes to actually love both Isa and Kreb, and they replace the family and the people that she had lost. Her memory of her people fades, and she can't remember actually really what happened. It was so traumatic. But she would have these nightmares, and every once in a while she would wake up screaming, and Isa and Kreb would have to try to comfort her. But over time, all that remained were these nightmares. So Kreb, who's this incredibly powerful and actually very warm-hearted man, explains to Ayla how the clan works and tells her that their group is called the Clan of the Cave Bear. So this is a cave bear. This is also now an extinct animal. It resembles a grizzly bear or a brown bear. It's got that hump on its back. But according to the scientists, this was a bear that wasn't carnivorous. It was mostly vegetarian. And it could be ferocious, and it was as big as a grizzly bear. But this was the totem, or the kind of the spirit of this clan group. So life with the clan for Ayla was very difficult. Many of the clan members don't accept her, and she has to work really, really hard to adjust to their way of life. Very early, Isa recognizes Ayla's gift for healing and her innate intelligence. Ayla was not born clan, but she learned to adapt. Through Isa, Ayla learned how to become a healer too. Isa decided, and one of the things that was interesting is they thought that Ayla was really ugly because she looked so different from the clan. And so Ayla grew up thinking that she was a very ugly person. And they recognized that probably she would never be able to find a mate because she wasn't attractive to any of their clan members. So Isa felt that it would be important for Ayla to have power and status in her own right. And so she decided that Ayla had the intelligence and the ability to also become a healer. And so Isa very patiently explained to her how to become a medicine woman like Isa. So life during the Ice Age was really, really hard. Plants and animals, people, everyone struggled to adapt. And they had to in order to survive. Ayla lives with the clan for 9 years. And eventually she's forced to leave. You'll have to read the book to find out why. But before she left, she remembered what Isa had told her before Isa had passed away. Ayla, she told her, you have to find your own people, the ones the clan called the others. And so, at age 14, Ayla sets out alone on this journey to try to find the others. She's got many skills, and during her time with the clan, she learned to do many things and how to survive in such a harsh environment. She searches for a long time without success. With winter approaching, she eventually finds a protected valley and a cave. And in the meantime, so she decides, I need to find a place to live. And she has the skills to hunt, to gather and find food, to be near a water source, to make tools, so that she is able to survive. During this time that she's living in the cave alone, she rescues a foal that has lost its mother, and she raises it to adulthood. And this horse becomes a very, very important friend of hers, and she names her Winnie. So Ayla actually eventually teaches herself how to ride on her horse's back. And whether or not this is the way it happened, eventually we know that humans domesticated horses and did require or acquire the ability to use them in ways. But up to that time, nobody had even thought of using a horse or of training a horse or raising a horse. Back then, horses were food. They were a source of hunting. So those people used horses, as a source of food. At one point, Winnie decides to leave and rejoins a herd, but then she comes back sometime later and brings with her the beginnings of a new horse. She found a stallion, but she does eventually return to Ayla, and then she has her own foal. Even more remarkable, during this time she's in the valley, she rescues an injured cave lion cub. Cave lions, which also do not exist anymore, are bigger than the lions that are in Africa today. And this is what they look like, big animal. So she rescues a little cub that got injured by some hyenas. And she, as a healer, couldn't just let this little cub at the time die. So she raises this lion cub until it gets to be this giant lion. But because it was so young when she rescued it, she became this lion's mother, and she named this cub Baby, and that's who she kept calling it. Ayla lives in this valley for 3 years when 2 traveling brothers who come way from the west come to her valley. Before she's able to meet them, these brothers accidentally encounter baby. And due to very poor judgment by one of the brothers, he's killed. And his brother is seriously injured. And Ayla finds them both. She's able to kind of bury the brother, but the other brother is so badly injured that she doesn't even know if he's going to live. She's able, with the horse's help, take him back to her cave, and she nurses him back to health so that he survives. He wouldn't have survived. He would have died there too if it hadn't been for Ayla and all of her healing skills. So he is and his name is Jondalar. He's the first one of the others that she has met since she has lost her own people. He has to teach her many things, including how to speak. She never learned to speak with the clan because that's not something that they did. So then he's there for an entire year, and then they wait till the spring. And then they decide that they're going to go on a little adventure and try to meet more of the others. And then they do. They run into another group that call themselves the Mammoth Hunters. Ayla has finally found people of her own kind, but she has so much more to learn. She also has a lot to share with others, including her gift as a healer, her remarkable connection to animals, her knowledge about the clan, her skill as a hunter, and her as yet untrained ability to connect with the spirit world. This was a gift that Isa's brother Kreb recognized and also tried to nurture. So while staying with the mammoth hunter, Ayla rescues a wolf cub. So here's another animal she rescues whose mother has died. And what do you think she names this wolf cub? Wolf. Very logical. But she raises him, she brings him to the mammoth hunters, and they think, nobody ever brings animals here, and this is the wolf. This is going to get really large. But as we all know, all dogs come from wolves. And as we know, humans domesticated wolves. Over time, we have developed a very close bond with dogs, but they started out as wolves. And so this is an example of someone who took a wolf cub and domesticated him. So wolf becomes a part of the mammoth hunters group and a very beloved member. So Ayla has many more adventures and learns many things that amaze and teaches many things that amazes everyone with her skills and her talents. And it is a classic story of self-discovery and awakening. So I'm going to stop here and let you know that it does have a happy ending, but you have to go through 6 books to find out. But it's a fantastic story in so many ways. And so I'll ask you, why am I telling you about this book? And well, first of all, like I said, this is all life forms. And I thought, well, these are life forms that I don't know anything about. I got so excited about reading this book and hearing about all these names, and I knew the Dharma School children would love to hear and see all of these animals, or at least some of these animals as well, because everybody gets excited about dinosaurs, and of course they lived 65 million years ago, and I know my son really loved dinosaurs, but we don't know that much about prehistoric mammals, and that's what this group of animals were that Ayla encountered. And so I want to share with you some of these animals. First of all, this is a woolly rhinoceros. They're extinct now too, but they lived near near the glaciers as well. They developed a very thick coat, and they were able to survive in this very harsh and difficult Ice Age climate. And I did mention that the cave lion also is an extinct animal. So here, some of you will know what this is. What do we call this animal? Buffalo or bison? Bison's probably the more accurate name. This bison from this period was much bigger than the bison that we now have in present day life. But there were herds and herds of these bison, and this was a food source for many of the prehistoric people. How many know what this is? It's a woolly mammoth. And of course, this animal doesn't exist anymore either. There are thousands of mammoth bones in Siberia of these mammoths. There were giant herds of mammoth back in the Ice Age day, and they were perfectly suited for the Ice Age. They had really thick coats, and they were able to withstand the extreme temperatures of the Ice Age. And they were also hunted by people. But mostly they died out because of climate change. So this was another animal that I thought was really interesting. It's called a Megaloceros, and it's an ancestor to deer and elk and moose. But again, this animal is extinct. This animal had the biggest racks of any of these kind of antlered animals. They would be 10 feet across. So my arms stretch about 5 feet, so 2 of my arm lengths would be as much as 10 feet. So this is a huge animal. So all of these stories, all of what I shared with you today is to just illustrate our deep connection to all of life on Earth, and it has varied and changed over the 13 billion years that the Earth has been in existence. As we know in Buddhism, nothing stays the same, everything's impermanent, and change is the reality of life. As we remember that today's all life forms, I hope that you will keep in mind that we have this deep connection to all living things, past and present, and I hope that we can all learn to appreciate that connection. One of the things that came out of reading this book is just how unique humans are. We are the only species on the planet, and up to this point, that has the ability to wonder, to ask why. We always talk about children, how they are so curious, they're always asking, why this, why that? Well, that is such a unique human quality, and that's one of the reasons why we have been so successful. We have the ability to look back and learn from mistakes, and to look forward, and to think about new ways and use our imagination to do new things. And that was the secret of why humans have survived and have been able to be so successful. It also gets in the way sometimes of being able to be fully present in the moment. So I think we have to appreciate our ability and our understanding of ourselves, but also remember that we need to be always thinking about and appreciating what we have today in this moment. So please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu.